What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone's doing great. Everyone's having a really good day. In this video, I see the title and it's a true crime video. Even though I love my true crime, some are more heartbreaking than others. The crazed, the crazed man who attacked a school with a flamethrower. The 1964 Cologne school massacre. Now you have to be really effed up to attack a bunch of kids, not just with a gun, a flamethrower. You know what a flamethrower is? Google it. It's exactly how it sounds. It's a big gun, like a flames, fire comes out. You see someone or an animal and you want to light it up on fire, just like that. Just like in the movies, action movies, sometimes you see flamethrowers. Anyways, I've never heard of this case. Let's get to it.
Walter Seifert's neighbours tended to avoid him, more so after the death of his wife, when he seemingly broke and lost all sense of himself.
So he lost his wife and lost all sense. I'm guessing lost his mind.
While they all agreed he was a peculiar character, none of them would have thought he was capable of cold-blooded murder. That is, until one fateful day in June 1964, when he carried out a crime so disturbing that it continues to haunt the people of Cologne. His despicable actions that day would earn him the nickname of the Fire Devil of Volkhoven. Willie Walter Seifert was born on June 11th, 1922 in the Bickendorf district of Cologne. In 1935, at the age of 13, he finished elementary school and started an apprenticeship at the local machine factory, where he trained as a metal worker. In 1941, with Germany needing all the manpower it could get to fight in World War II, he was drafted into the Luftwaffe. He rose quickly through the ranks, and by the end of the conflict, he had been appointed sergeant in an anti-aircraft battery. When Germany was defeated, Seifert spent several months as an Allied prisoner of war. Soon after his release, he joined the police force but was let go after only a year, when he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, a lung disease that his superiors believed made him unfit for service. Believing that he had contracted tuberculosis from his time at the Allied Forces prison camp, Seifert tried his best.
Do they have a cure for tuberculosis? Can't pronounce it. It killed millions of people. What year? This was 1964, so they might have had a cure by then.
To get it recognized as a symptom of his time serving in the war, which would have entitled him to a hefty pension. But his efforts proved to be unsuccessful, and he soon began harbouring an intense hatred for the government, which he believed was cheating him out of his hard-earned retirement money. By 1953,
I gotta be honest, I would have been pissed too. I've been like, anyway.
It was found that Seifert's tuberculosis had become inactive. In an effort to determine his ability to return to work, he underwent an examination by a public health officer. This officer noted that he seemed to be mentally devious with no great will to recover. Enraged by these findings, Seifert wrote a letter to medical officials.
Mentally devious. So, he was fit to...
In an effort to determine his ability to return to work, he underwent an examination by a public health officer. This officer noted that he seemed to be mentally devious with no great will to recover.
Mentally devious. With no will to recover.
Enraged by these findings, Seifert wrote a letter to medical officials titled "Social Politics, Social Doctors, Social Murder." This letter landed him with another examination, this time with a doctor of psychiatry who promptly found he exhibited strange, fanatical behaviour, had paranoid thoughts, and seemed to smile constantly during inappropriate circumstances. The doctor eventually diagnosed him as a paranoid schizophrenic. Still, since he showed no dangerous or violent behaviour, it was decided he did not need to be placed in an institution.
Okay, right now, I'm blaming the mental physicians for what he did at this school. He suffers from schizophrenia, and you say he doesn't need to be in an institution, because I don't know if they had meds in the 1960s. I don't think they had meds yet for schizophrenia. I think you had to go to a mental institution. So far they haven't done anything for him.
Some would argue otherwise. It's alleged that at some point during the 1950s, Seifert reportedly got into a massive fight with his younger brother after describing his plan to create a basement underneath his parents' house. Nothing too unusual in that, perhaps. However, he went on to state he would use the space to hold captive minors whom he would abduct and abuse. Naturally, this horrified his sibling. Perhaps surprisingly, Seifert was able to maintain a relationship with a woman named Renata Erz.
And the brother never told anyone about this? I don't care. You guys have to understand, okay? Forget about, snitches get stitches. I don't care about the whole family thing. If you have a brother, if my brother told me this, I would have told my mom and dad. I'm 43, and if my brother... Well, this sounds like this happened when he was in his 30s, maybe 20s. Doesn't matter. If you have a sibling that says something like that to you, tell your parents, see what they say, and no matter what they say, you go to the police. People that say stuff like that, I'm a die-hard true crime fan, have been for 15 years, a die-hard true crime fan, and people that end up killing people, it turns out, later, after they committed the murder or murders, that they had said weird stuff like what this guy said to a family member or to a friend, and they just brushed it off. Do not just brush those effing things off. If you have a friend that tells you they want to build a basement so they can kidnap and trap minors, or just any type of just devious BS. Well, actually, it's not BS. Any type of that crap that sounds dangerous and just disturbing, go to the police. Don't brush it off. Oh, that's my family. I can't rat them out. Because if you ever had someone, if you're watching this and you ever had someone, family member or friend, who killed someone or killed someone's, and they told you something that was just devious, just disgusting, and you didn't say anything, you just brushed it off, there's blood on your hands. Never forget that. I don't care what you're thinking. I don't care if you're saying, if you're giving me the finger right now, I don't care. There's blood on your hands because you could have stopped it. Like this brother and the mental physicians who could have sent him to a mental institution.
Zula, whom he married on October the 7th, 1955. Married life seems to have calmed his mind, and the subsequent years passed with few noteworthy events. 6 years later, things would take a tragic turn. The married couple were expecting their first child when Renata began to go into labour prematurely. In the hospital, while giving birth, Renata suffered an embolism and died. The premature child would also pass away. Enraged by the loss, Seifert wrote a 120-page document titled Matricide, Individual Destiny and Analysis of a System, which he sent to authorities and the doctors who treated his wife. In the document, he states, "The doctor is the greatest mass murderer of the poor in the history of mankind." According to a translated article from the web,
he was happy. He was married to a wife that he loved, expecting a child, and she died, and the baby died, which still happens to this day. But that doesn't cause most men to go on a rampage like he did with Flamethrower at school. So this just opened up those old wounds. And he sent a 120-page letter with a typewriter. I mean, this isn't something, a typewriter takes a long time. 120 pages.
Website Vomily Photography, quote, "The writing makes it clear that Seifert must have dealt intensively with medical literature, which he now cited to support his accusations. He attacked his wife's doctors, whom he accused of treating the embolism incorrectly, calling them murderers," end quote. Perhaps it had been Renata who had quelled Walter's rage against his perceived injustice at the hands of doctors and the government. Regardless, many believe that it was the death of his wife that finally pushed him over the edge.
Well, that's true. I never thought about that. Maybe he still had that anger toward the government, but his wife calmed him down and said, "Honey, just relax, just calm down."
His unhappiness became more and more unbearable with each passing month. A translated article reads, quote, "His social environment judged him differently after the death of his wife. Some neighbours avoided him, perceiving him as crazy or odd, while others appreciated his helpfulness and his love for children." End quote. Nobody knows precisely what drove him to do the unthinkable, but on June the 11th, 1964, the day of his 42nd birthday, Seaford decided to commit a crime so horrific that it sent shockwaves throughout the entire country. That morning, Walter went to a Catholic elementary school in the...
When life's not sweet, it sticks. So natives pulling something new from the jar. Scents so craveable.
In the Volkhoven district of Cologne, entire country. That morning, Walter went to a Catholic elementary school in the Volkhoven district of Cologne, one of Germany's largest cities. The school consisted of an old two-story brick building surrounded by 3 one-story wooden pavilions which were scattered around the yard. At the time, there were nearly 400 students inside, while a small group of 2nd and 3rd grade children were outside taking gymnastics lessons from a teacher named Anna Langor. At around 9 a.m, Seaford arrived at the school with what appeared to be a standard pressure sprayer strapped to his back, the kind people use to treat plants with insecticides. He was wearing overalls, and several crossing guards who saw him thought he was merely a handyman preparing to do some gardening or perhaps fix the gates. Along with the sprayer, Seaford also carried a homemade lance, mace and wedge, amongst other items. He closed the school gates and used the wedge to secure them. Once inside, he reportedly ran toward the children having classes outside, screaming and pointing the sprayer's nozzle towards them. But rather than insecticide, a huge jet of flame shot out from the nozzle. Anna Longo, the 67-year-old teacher, tried to stop Seaford and protect her children, but she was engulfed in flames. Seaford then made his way to the nearest classroom and fired his makeshift flamethrower through an open window, sending flames spewing from one wall to the other. He then used the mace to smash the window of a second classroom before repeating his atrocious attack. By this point, the makeshift flamethrower's fuel had run out, but Seaford's evil rampage wasn't finished. Gertrude Bollenrath, one of the teachers in the first classroom, helped her students put out their burning clothes before leading them from the burning building. Once outside, she was set upon by Seaford, who attacked her with the lance. She would sadly succumb to her wounds. Setting out for the pavilion, the psychotic killer found his path blocked as a teacher, Ursula Kerr, and her colleague Mrs. Kunz tried to hold the doors closed. They were eventually overpowered, with Ursula falling down the stairs outside. Seaford then attacked her with his lance. She would sadly die at the scene.
What's a lance?
Her sacrifice wasn't in vain, however. Thanks to Ursula, workers from a passing garbage truck who had heard the commotion had managed to break through the blocked school gate and were helping the children. Hearing them, Seaford fled the school through a field behind it. Upon learning of the tragedy, the school's 36-year-old headmaster, Helmut Hudezek, reported...
They're showing pictures, and looks like the aftermath of a fire. Not like a complete fire, but a fire that started and was put out, burnt desks and walls.
Reportedly said, quote, "When I heard the first screams, I didn't think anything bad. Children often cry. But then the burning children. It was terrible." End quote. The massacre, now known as Das Attendant von Volkhoven, or the Volkhoven assassination, saw the largest disaster operation in Cologne since the night of the World War II bombings. Every ambulance in the city was sent to the school, while residents in the vicinity took it upon themselves to take injured children to the nearest hospitals. Meanwhile, the local government called on burn specialists from across Germany, asking them to come to Cologne to help treat the victims. In total, 30 students and teachers were injured, with some suffering 90% burns to their bodies. Despite the hospital's best efforts, 8 students couldn't be saved and passed away over the following 3 weeks. Later, they were identified as Dorothea Binner, Clara Kroger, Stephen Lischka, Renate Fullen, Rosen Rohrig, Ruth Hoffman, Karen Reinhold, and Ingeborg Hahn. The teachers who had tried in vain to stop Seifert suffered horrific injuries too. Unfortunately, 24-year-old Ursula Kerr and 61-year-old Gertrude Bollenrath ultimately succumbed to theirs, while Anna Langor barely survived hers. As for Seifert, he had tried to kill himself by swallowing the poisonous insecticide E605 after fleeing the elementary school pursued by some 20 or so people. He fended them off with the spear until the police arrived, and he was shot in the leg and taken to hospital. There he was interrogated several times by Manfred Gundlach, then head of the city's homicide squad. He asked why he had committed such an atrocious act, with Seifert stating that several doctors wanted to kill him. But why attack a school? The only answer he could give was, "It's a bad thing. It was maybe a bad idea." Seifert then died at 8:35 p.m. Upon investigation, the authorities concluded that he had meticulously planned the attack, going so far as to manufacture the weapons himself using skills he had learned while serving in the war. He would eventually come to be known as the Feuerteufel von Köln, which translates to the Fire Devil of Cologne. While some may have been pleased that he had died, others felt he had escaped facing justice. His body was cremated, and it was claimed his ashes were scattered in secret. Later it came to light that his urn had actually been buried in his mother's grave, which was located near the graves of several of his victims. Unsurprisingly, this raised protests from the family members of his victims, which led to the police reburying it. This time, though, they refused to disclose its new location. The spectre of the events of that summer's day still haunts Cologne. A plaque details the tragic events and states, "We will not forget them." In a churchyard nearby lies the grave of Ursula Kerr. The gravestone depicts the teacher selflessly shielding the children entrusted to her from a wall of flames.
And that's the end of it. I think this could have been avoided. When I look at, true crime videos, murders, rapes, domestic abuse, murders because of domestic abusers, not given longer prison sentences like they should. But the U.S. judicial system is a total joke. Anyways, in this case, I think it could have been avoided. I mean, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and they didn't do anything. Nowadays, in like the past 25, 30 years, you're given medication and you have to stay on that medication. Because if you don't, then you can do bad stuff, you know. You gotta stay on your medication. So in 1964 they didn't have, I gotta Google that, they didn't have any medication for schizophrenia. He should have been sent to a mental institution, even though I don't know. There's just so many things. I mean, him telling his brother before he got married and met this girl, his wife who died, that he wanted to build a basement under his parents' house so he could kidnap minors and rape them. I mean, there's so many signs. There's just so many signs. Now, does everyone who has schizophrenia back in the 60s do something like this? No. When he was married, could he have still acted angry and just toward the government and say all this stuff? You know, I want to do this, I hate, you know, them for this. Yeah, he could have, probably did. His wife probably calmed him down. But, yeah, when she died, she and her unborn baby, they both died. He sent a 120-page letter, if you will, I guess, 120 pages, to the government or to the police or whatever. Saying how the doctors murdered his wife and his unborn baby. That was a schizophrenia. I mean, if he was married for 6 years and then his wife died, and schizophrenia doesn't go away. It stays with you. It doesn't take 6 years off. So there might have been things that he said when he was married to his wife that maybe she probably should have told police. You never know. Anyways, I'm not defending what he did, because there's people that suffer from schizophrenia and they never take a flamethrower and do all that stuff to children and human beings. The ones that survived, 90% of their body was burned. I mean, I can't even, I'm glad they didn't show any photos or anything. I would have been like, oh, can't even imagine. These poor kids and adults, teachers. Anyways, thanks for watching. To all my subscribers, thank you so much. If you're new to the channel, please give me a chance. Please check out all my other videos, and please subscribe. It means so much to me. You have no idea. I try so hard and think of stuff to review, and I have over 11,000 views, but only 135 subscribers. So please subscribe and give me a chance. Like always and forever, take care, be safe, peace everyone.